What's up, guys? This is Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down why the market's showing some weakness and why there's downside risk looking at the current setups. What President Trump just said that's very important and what's going to likely happen for tomorrow as I give you guys my price predictions. Just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I'm saying as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link that's down below or sign up with my QR code that's right over here. If you sign up for Moomoo and deposit $100, you're going to get $20 of free Nvidia stock. If you deposit $2,000 or more, you're going to get $50 worth of Nvidia for free, plus a $100 cash reward. Deposits $10,000 to get $300 worth of Nvidia plus a $100 cash reward, or deposit $50,000 or more to get $1,000 of free Nvidia stock, and also a $100 cash reward on top of that. You're also going to qualify for an 8.1% APY on uninvested cash, and the offer ends very, very soon. So if you want those free Nvidia shares, if you want all these benefits in free cash, please check out my links down below to sign up or use this QR code. Anyways, with that being said, now we're just going to focus on what's happening with the market. So let me just mention that on the 4-hour time frame, the PPO is nearing a bearish cross, and we saw some bearish flow coming into SPY, which could be indicative of some downside to come on the 4-hour time frame. On the daily time frame, we have a topping candlestick that's formed right here, and this could be a sign we're about to get a pivot as well on SPY. So you want to be very, very careful. Simultaneously, as the QQQ is pushing, which is, decent, you have to remember that this is becoming riskier because on the 4-hour time frame, we have a rising wedge and a triple bearish divergence on the MACD. So there's a rising wedge on the QQQ that could lead to some downside for the 580s or below if that ends up being the case. SPY also has a triple bearish divergence that has been developing that could lead to a lot of volatility. So you want to be very, very careful nonetheless. So with these rising wedges, bearish divergences, and topping candlesticks forming on SPY and the QQQ, and you have to also keep in mind that the VIX has a bullish falling wedge, which typically leads to upside. And we're in the 14s on the VIX. Every time we hit 14 on the VIX since the year started, the VIX bounced by at least 5 to 10 points or even more. So my point is we're in a risky territory. The market is at all-time highs right before the Fed's about to cut. And typically the short term does see volatility, although the long term is still quite bullish. So what's happening with President Trump? What could cause the market to sell off and what's going on? Let's actually break down what the catalyst can be. Then I'll break down exactly what I think is going to happen tomorrow. So with President Trump, there's been some news coming out that he has called on all NATO countries to stop buying Russian oil. He also threatened 50 to 100% tariffs on China and more tariffs on India. And he mentioned and made it very, very clear he's not really happy with Russia and he does not want countries buying their oil. He also mentioned that, once again, there's going to be tariffs coming for semiconductors because he wants to see production in the USA. He did make those threats last week. He was saying that for a while. We didn't really hear much since then because there was so much stuff going on in the news and other things President Trump was focused on. But just today, he suddenly said something involving this, and this is very important. President Trump said that when foreign companies who are building extremely complex products, machines, and various other things come into the USA with massive investments, he wants them to bring their people of expertise for a long period of time to teach and train our people how to make these very unique and complex products as they phase out of our country and back into their land. So what he's saying is that when foreign companies, when they start building extremely complex products, he wants them to teach America how to once again build the products as well. He doesn't want them to just, build things, do other things, and then just leave, take the expertise away. He wants them to teach us how to build things. Okay, that's a very simple way of looking at this. He said that if we didn't do this, all of that massive investment will never come in the first place. The chips, semiconductors, computers, and the list goes on for all these different products. Once again, he said that we used to be very, very great at producing all these things, but now, once again, we have to learn from others on how to make it. He does not want to frighten off or de-incentivize investment into America by outside countries or companies. He welcomes them. That's what President Trump is saying. But once again, he said that we are willing to proudly say that we will learn from them and do an even better job than them at their own game sometime into the not too distant future. So what does this mean? President Trump wants to see us build more in America. He wants America to learn how to build more products like computers, and he wants us to see more semiconductors built in the US. He made that very, very clear. And then he keeps saying in the not too distant future, right? We're going to start to learn how to build in America, right? What is he implying? He's implying that he's going to be imposing tariffs or changing policy to get more production to the US. That's what his main incentive is. So he does not want to end trade. He does not want to stop countries from, bringing their expertise to the U.S. or stopping investments. He's okay with that continuing, but he's saying he wants the U.S. to learn from what on earth they're bringing. He wants us to start being able to beat them at their own game and build in the USA. So he is telling us tariffs. Tariffs are likely going to be coming on semiconductors. I'm seeing this over and over again on the news and from him. And if we see President Trump announce that, I want to show you guys something interesting. Nvidia has been pushing nicely, sure, but notice that we're fighting some tough resistance right here around the 180 area. And then my concern is this: the daily time frame. It also has this giant gap down here. So if we start dipping on Nvidia, we come back down to fill that gap. Imagine the effect this is going to be having on the QQQ, on SPY, and the markets. And that's not the only gap. If we end up losing this low here, there's actually plenty of gaps down here. There's one down here, another one down here. There's plenty of gaps from here all the way down to like 150 on Nvidia. Could that be a sign we're going to get a temporary correction? That could be what kind of like leads to correction, because semiconductors are making up a big amount of volatility in this market. So President Trump is the first factor affecting this. Another factor is going to be what's happening involving the Fed. So we got the governmental non-farm payrolls and non-farm payrolls in general. And our data is telling us that the numbers could have been overstated by about 911,000 jobs in the last 12 months. That's a big difference. Basically, in a nutshell, the jobs numbers are weak. We're starting to see a lot of jobless applications. We're seeing unemployment rising to the highest levels we've seen in years. So jobs are looking weaker in America right now. And as a result of this, the Fed is going to cut. There's a 96.4% chance at the time of recording this, we get a 25 basis point cut. 3.6% chance we see 50 basis points. Right now with our data, there's not really much coming out for earnings, but there's not really a whole lot coming out for earnings. So the main thing to pay attention to for the week is going to be the Fed. So when it comes to the Fed, if they give us 25 basis points, I do think this is mostly priced in already. And this could lead to a sell the news kind of like reaction. But if we get 50 basis points, my view will change. We could still remain bullish. I do lean towards what the bonds market is pricing in, which is going to be a 25 basis point cut. On top of this, tomorrow is going to be Monday, September 15th. At 11:30 a.m., we have the 3 and 6 month bill auctions coming out, so expect some volatility. And finally, the fear and greed index is currently at neutral. We're not fearful or greedy, but we're going to see if this shifts. Greed makes up the majority of momentum, and the VIX is once again approaching a neutral position. Are we about to see the VIX bounce big time? So what do I see on this? Starting off with SPY, we're just going to focus on the charts and nothing else. I think we're going to see a dip tomorrow. Now, to be bullish, you want to see us hold above 658. If we could hold above that, we do have potential to go up to about 660. But as you guys can tell, we're kind of turning here, and we have like a liquidity grab, which makes me suspect that we kind of chop tomorrow. And then we're going to be looking for an attempt to dip to like 655 to 654. I think our 20 EMA is going to curl upwards for like 654. And then we'll see if we end up bouncing off that temporarily before we potentially form like another top and begin to dip. So I expect us to dip to like 654 to 655 tomorrow for a temporary dip. We'll see if we bounce a bit before FOMC, then we could be looking for another rejection. So for now, the 4-hour does look weaker, and we are going to be favoring some downside in my personal opinion. On the triple Q, it's the same thing. Although we've been making higher highs and higher lows, there is a bearish divergence and a rising wedge. Okay, there's a rising wedge forming on the triple Q. Are we about to see the stock break out of the rising wedge? Are our ETFs about to show some weakness? If we hold above 588, we could be bullish for 590. But if 588 does not break, I expect us to kind of like consolidate and eventually start dipping back down to like 585 or below. And if that fails us, we're looking for 582. So is there going to be some downside risk? Yes, I think we consolidate, and eventually we're going to be looking for 585 or below. On the daily time frame, I think that although we're holding up nicely, this could be churning as well, since we have like a lot of gaps to fill. And on the daily, we actually have a triple bearish divergence, which typically signifies that there's going to be some downside coming if you look at the MACD. So I think it's possible we consolidate a bit around 586, but then I do expect some downside towards 582 or below. So be ready for some downside looking at the 4-hour and the divergences on the triple Q. On the IWM, now when you zoom out and go to the 4-hour, you'll see there's a giant inverse head and shoulders here. This suggests that the top would be around the low 240s. 240 to 245 is likely where this thing is going to top out. We already touched 240 last week, so we're going to see if we continue to break out higher or not. I anticipate that either we push a little bit more and form a top, or the top is already in, depending on if this is going to shift. We came very close to 242 already. Either we push a bit higher, and then we're going to be looking for a final top and it starts to dip back down, or we make a lower high and we just retest like 240, then turn. Either way, I think 240 to 245 is it, and this thing is going to be looking for a big reversal back down to the low 230s. Also, there's a gap to fill on the daily time frame. Let's look for a small bounce towards 240, and we'll see if we get a big rejection. On ES, we also have a bearish divergence, and then we're going to be looking for 65, 63 as our main support. I think right now, ES is kind of like consolidating. I do expect this to kind of continue like this, but then we're going to be anticipating 65, 63 or below to start dipping lower, and we'll see if we bounce. Otherwise, look for some consolidation and a move back down towards 65, 63. On NQ, we have a bearish divergence unless we get back above 24,000, or unless we hold above 24,200. I anticipate it's going to push here, retest this low, and consolidate. Then we're going to be looking for a retest of 23,964. If that fails us, we could be dipping back down. Bitcoin is trying to push a bit. It could be pushing towards 116,500 to 117,000. And we're going to see if this turns back down, if we touch resistance and kind of like turn back down to 115,000. So you want to be very, very careful nonetheless. On Tesla, I think that Tesla has a gap to fill in the low 400s. So I think Tesla still goes a bit higher, but I would be very careful in the low 400s because we could be looking for a topping signal. So we might push a bit more tomorrow for the low 400s, and we're going to be looking to see if this pivots. If it does, we could be looking for a move back down to the 380s. So be very careful with Tesla. Nvda has a head and shoulders like pattern, and on the daily time frame, we also happen to have a gap to fill, a gap back down to like 170. If we see new semiconductor tariffs, that could really negatively affect things for Nvda. So we're going to be watching this left shoulder, head, and right shoulder. And then I expect us to consolidate and eventually start dipping to like 172, and we'll see if we bounce, but be ready for some downside just to be safe. Appl, however, looks more bullish. It might be pushing a bit higher for like 236, but I'd be very, very careful at this level right here, this support becoming resistance. We could touch 236 and turn back down to like 232, and we'll see what happens. Netflix is on a bit of a downtrend. As you guys could tell, we're making lower highs. We need to hold 1180. If we don't, we're going to be dipping more. So we'll see if we bounce off 1180 or not. If we don't, I do expect this to eventually dip back down to like 1150 or below. On MSTR, we're looking a little bit more bullish. This might try to consolidate and push back up towards 335. And then I do think it consolidates here, and then it could turn back down. So it might go a little higher for 335 before it turns back down. Celsius is looking decent. We're trying to make higher lows right here. We could be looking for a retest of 58.26. And then we're going to see if this turns. We need to hold above that to push higher. If we don't, we could be turning back down to fill the gap at 56 flat. Supermicro is rejecting here unless we hold above 45.4. We're going to be favoring a bounce and a rejection to 43.8. Palantir is looking more bullish. We're going to be favoring a push higher back up towards 174. So I do think it pushes a bit to the low 170s. Then we could be turning back down towards 168. So you want to be very careful with the pivot that could be coming. Look for some temporary upside for the low 170s, and we'll see if we turn back down. 172, then back down to 168 could be coming. Rivian looks a bit more bullish to me. It could be looking for basically 13.67 to 13.8. And then we'll see if this turns back down towards 13.25. So look for a temporary bounce and rejection. SoFi is looking more bullish. As long as we don't lose 25.9, we're going to be favoring 27 plus, as we have some upside potential. AMD has an inverse head and shoulders, but simultaneously you can interpret this as making lower highs. So I'd still be very careful as this looks symmetrical. This also resembles a head and shoulders. So I do think that we could be looking for a small move up back to the low 160s, and we'll see if we turn back down towards 154. If that fails us, we could be dipping back down to the low 150s, so I'd be very, very careful with AMD. ARM is going to likely retest 148. If that fails us, we're looking for 145. PayPal is rejecting off our 20 EMA unless we hold above 67.3. I'm going to be favoring a move back down to 66. Coinbase is kind of bullish looking. It might go a little higher for basically this 328 area, but I'd be very careful here because we do like to reject in the low 330s. So even if we push a bit higher towards like 328, we could be turning back down. And I do think that this might eventually reject and dip back down to the low 300s again. Amazon's barely holding its 200 EMA, the red line here. So I think we revisit the red line. We bounce a bit to like 230, then reject for 225, and we'll see if we bounce. I expect some downside. So 230, then 225 is likely coming. If Meta loses 746, we could be dipping lower. I think that this kind of resembles a head and shoulders. We might push a bit towards like 760. We need to take out this high to be bullish. If we don't, if we come short, this could still turn back down to 737. Google is looking kind of weak, could be retesting 238, and we'll see if we bounce. So watch 238, and we'll see what ends up happening from here. Microsoft might be retesting 506, and we'll see if we bounce. You want to be very, very careful. And for the rest of these, we have DJT, which is looking bullish. If we break 17.1, we're looking for essentially 17.5. The VIX is on a downtrend. We want to see if this could break out of this like falling wedge. I do think that with this downtrend it's been on, we're eventually going to be forming a bottom soon. And we're going to be looking for a breakout above 17 within a week from now. The 10-year is going to make a big move depending on Jerome Powell and the Fed, and so is the dollar. There's not really much going on with these. So tomorrow specifically, I do think we dip a little bit. I think 655 to 654 is going to be retested on SPY, and we'll see if we bounce. If we don't, we expect even more downside to come, so be very, very ready. Get ready for some downside and watch and see what happens once we test our 20 EMA. And be ready for a bit of a pullback tomorrow. I think we chop around in the morning, then we see us dip at least 3 points or so, maybe a bit more. And if we lose, 653, we could be dipping even more. So we'll see about that. But for now, I anticipate some downside as the most likely possibility. So that being said, guys, I want to thank you all so much for listening. I hope you guys have an awesome rest of your guys' weekends. I hope you guys enjoy your day, nights, or evenings, wherever you guys are around the world. But I just want to say that things are becoming riskier in the markets. We have large bearish divergences developing, and we're starting to see some weakness in terms of our trends. So please be very, very mindful of that, as we could be looking for a big shift very soon in our volatility. So that being said, I hope you guys have an awesome rest of your guys' days. Enjoy the weekend, and I'll see you guys tomorrow before market open to give you guys another update. As the market's becoming riskier, be very careful and watch your levels, as we could be looking for a pivot very soon. We have FOMC this week and lots of big stuff affecting the markets, so be ready. And with that being said, I thank you for listening. Have a good one, and peace out.